I'm super excited for y'all to meet Marc Thompson. I've known Marc Thompson from way, way back in the day when we was in New York together. Just doing the actor thing, going to auditions, rehearsals, doing all kinds of stuff, working on projects together. We worked on several projects, and still to this day, when I am working on a project and I get to a point where I need a voice and I need somebody to lift the words off the page and tell a story. And I will try every which way. I'm like, you know what am I doing? Let me stop playing. Let me call Marc. Let me go on call Marc and have him do this thing because the production, the value of the product just raises and levels up in a way that's so dope. Like to this day, our Dance and Be More intro is your voiceover. So, Marc, we thank you. He's got an incredible resume, but I'll turn it over to Francis and we'll hear a little bit about what he's done. And then he'll just, jam with you. He's very interactive in his conversation and sharing with you what he's learned over the years being an actor on stage, on the microphone, and in lots of different capacities, whether it be television, animation, or movies. Francis, take it away.
Hey. Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. And Stephen is going to read the bio we have for Marc. All right. Stephen, could you read for us, please, sir?
Yes, I would love to. Well, nice to meet you, Mr. Marc Thompson.
Hey, nice to meet you.
So, Marc Thompson is an American voice actor who has worked for 4Kids Entertainment, NYAV Post, and DuArt Film and Video. Some of his major roles include Kevin Thompson, Anthony DeMartino, Timothy O'Neill, and Daria. He is notable for voicing the titular character in Robocar Poli.
Poli, yep.
Poli?
Yep.
Right, all right, great, sorry. He voices Cassie Jones in 2003 version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoons and video games. He's the narrator of numerous Star Wars audios, books including the Thrawn Trilogy, Hand of Thrawn, Legacy of the Force, and the Fate of Jedi series. He earned his BFA from New York University's Tisch School of the Arts in 1997. He's a Christian and a father of two. Oh, that's great.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. So now we're going to turn it over to Mr. Johnson. I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. And you can share your screen if you'd like.
Okay, great. Well, can everybody hear me? You guys hear my voice? Okay, great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the super kind introduction and everybody's warm welcome. I really appreciate it. I just want to say you guys are very lucky to have CJ. She is like one of the most creative and inspiring and passionate people I know. So the fact that you get to work with her on these projects and learn from her, I think is a huge treasure. And I hope you guys are grateful for her. And I don't know if Winston does stuff with Be More. I think he does, but you guys are very, very lucky. So I hope you know how lucky you are. So, but yeah, I've been, ever since I was young, I really wanted to be an actor. I was never super athletic. I was kind of average grade wise. But when I got into like school plays or musicals or choir, I just felt like everything lit up and I just felt like everything made sense. And that just really seemed to feel where I felt the most at home and I felt the most joy. And so I've loved performing, ever since high school, and my parents really looked out for programs like this for me to be a part of and signed me up for acting lessons and improv lessons and singing lessons. And it really paid off. And I think a lot of those skills and things I learned at that age were such a great foundation so that when a work opportunity popped up, I had something to build on. And I had a reasonable amount of skill to draw from and confidence to draw and experience to draw from, just being in shows and different productions and things like that, that have really ended up to this day helping me professionally. And just there's things that I did in those high school groups that I still use now. So the fact that you guys are doing this, the fact that you guys are involved in stuff like this, if this is something you want to maybe do professionally one day, you're doing the right thing. Like, just keep doing what you're doing, because this stuff will be invaluable to you. Just the experience of it, of working with a cast and kind of strengthening those muscles and kind of getting those habits in you at this age is going to be such a huge benefit for you if you want to do this professionally. And even if you don't, like, this is just so much fun, and it'll help you in a lot of different careers. Like, I know people that pursue business and kind of work in offices, but they will take improv acting classes so that they can be better at making presentations at work, or more effective in communicating their ideas and sales. And, so this stuff has like wide reaching benefits wherever you end up being. And it's just fun. So it's really cool to do it. So I went to school at NYU, as you guys mentioned in the bio. And very early on, while I was at school, I kind of ended up by accident almost ending up in voiceover. And voiceover is basically anytime you hear someone's voice, but maybe you don't see them on screen or on stage. So if you hear a voice over a film, like, or like maybe a cartoon character will have voice, or like audiobooks, that's an area that's really expanded a lot. Audiobooks are becoming more and more popular now. Something that's new on the scene that wasn't around when I first started is like podcasts. And like, they have, talking head podcasts where people talk about topics, but they also have dramatic podcasts. And I'm working on one right now, actually, where it's like almost like a radio play, and like you're kind of acting out a scene, but everything's through audio. There is no video, there's no image. It's just like a play in your mind. And then there's like explainer videos, there's commercials, there's all kinds of things where voiceover could be applicable. And I kind of I was a sophomore at NYU, and this was like kind of pre-internet and all that stuff. So back in my day, they posted a audition on a cork board, and there was literally like just a flyer on a cork board that said, looking for cartoon actors, call this phone number. And you had to call a phone number and leave a weird voice on an answering machine. And so I was like, okay. So it was like some cartoon about vampires or something like that. So I just called up this random number, and I was like, hello, I'd like to be on your cartoon. And I just was like being very creepy and goofy, but that got me in the door. And I ended up getting to go in and meet in person. And that was for MTV. And that was for a show. It was my first job ever. It was a show called Daria, which was a spinoff of another show called Beavis and Butthead. And it was basically like these like, crazy high school teachers and characters. And then from there, it just kind of started snowballing. And I auditioned and got to work on Pokemon. I still work on Pokemon currently. There's some shows called Yu-Gi-Oh that I work on. And then a bunch of the ones that you guys listed in the bio. So if you want, I was going to maybe just show you guys a brief sample of some of the stuff I've done. Let me just find my share screen. Give me 1 second. Okay. And then tell me if you guys can see this. Are you guys seeing this right now? All right. So this is a couple of the commercials I've gotten to be a part of. So
We don't hear sound though. I don't.
oh, you're not hearing sound?
No.
No. Okay, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Audio settings, speaker, microphone, Zoom, original. screen, share application. All right. I'm not sure how to do that.
You got that share sound button on the bottom left corner when you press share screen.
Let's see. So share screen options maybe. Advanced sharing options. Nope. Where did you say, CJ?
When you press the share screen button on the bottom left-hand corner, the share sound box, clicking that.
Thank you.
No worries.
Okay. All right, let's try that again. All right.
Report, Mr. Vice President.
Madam President, we have giant problems. Guess I'm president now.
Not so fast.
You can play new levels of Giant Dream at goldfishfun.com.
The snack that smiles back. Goldfish. Coming to Broadway.
Patty Lupo, Christine Ebersole, in the new musical about two trailblazers who saw beauty in power and power in beauty. War Paint.
All right. So that's my commercial demo. I have my animation. And then here, if you want to see some of the animation stuff.
What's the matter, Yugi? You've never heard of the monster cannon? That's too bad, because if you had, you'd know that monster cannon is a weapon that fires a monster at the enemy instead of a cannonball.
It already has worked. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have another appointment.
Let's play a bit of catch.
The Dreadnoks are gonna have a lot of fun knocking that smirk off your face. Now drop your weapons.
Snivy is no longer able to continue.
Pignite, the fire pig Pokemon. Pignite moves faster when its internal flame becomes more intense. This also occurs when it gets angry.
Pignite!
Audacious idea, Fergie! Being a rock star would be tubular. Driving limousines into swimming pools.
This can't be the band. I want rock and roll, man. Good thing I brought my own drumsticks. Now, who wants to beat a drum? Goongala! Goongala!
One, babe. I got one. All right, field trip.
Where are we going, man? The field.
Your sarcasm amuses me, Daria. I hope it provides you comfort when you're cowering in a foxhole.
I know, but there are so many cooler things I could be doing. Climbing Mount Everest, starting an app company. Wombat? Wombat? Stop fooling around.
I don't like it. They shut this thing down years ago for a reason.
Maybe you've forgotten what's at stake, Masterson.
You know I haven't. Whoever controls the Wayne controls the world.
Time to sing for my supper. With my rice, I like to have some cow. It tastes so very good, I don't know how. It's my favorite form of chow. Wow. Eat now.
There you go. So, so as you can see, I get to do a lot of different type of characters, which I think is really fun, and I have a good time doing it. And like there's like I have friends where they'll get hired because they have a very interesting voice or a very like naturally deep voice or a very naturally high voice, and you can get a lot of work in voiceover doing that. Just whatever your voice type is or whatever your natural demeanor is, you can definitely get a lot of work doing that. But you also can get a lot of work by being able to create, different voices and different sounds. And one
Mark, I
thing
have a
that,
quick question.
yeah, absolutely.
How many of those voices were you?
Oh, so that was all of those voices were me, except for the female voices. The everybody on there was me.
Wow.
Yeah. um, yeah. So, but one of the ways that I kind of learned how to do that, oh, this is the wrong one. I apologize. One of the ways that I learned how to do that is kind of learning to treat your voice almost as an instrument. Meaning, if you, why is this doing this? I apologize, everybody.
No worries.
Let me close the other one so I'm not.
And while he's doing that, if anybody has any additional questions you want to pop in the chat or just unmute and share a question, feel free to ask things throughout. Forgot to mention that at the top.
But one of the ways that I've kind of learned how to do this is treating your voice like an instrument. So the idea being that on a trumpet, if you hold down different buttons on a brass instrument or a wood instrument, you can get different sounds or different tones to come out by doing that. Or on a string instrument, if you hold down different strings, or if you hold it like closer or further away down the fret, it makes different sounds from that instrument. And your voice is the same way. Like, we have our vocal cords, but we also have different resonators in our body. And if we focus on pushing the sound waves to different parts of our body, different resonators, you can get different sounds the way you would out of an instrument, or different notes or tones. So, for example, like if everybody could just kind of put your hand on your chest, and then I want you to visualize the sound and kind of the airways and the vibrations in your chest, and just kind of try to visualize it all down here. And if you can tell, my voice is a little bit lower now, and it sounds very, kind of resonant, that you should be able to feel the vibrations in your chest. Okay. And just on your own, if you want, you can go, ha, ha, ha. Go ahead and try that by yourselves in your rooms. Good. I'm seeing Tarzan. This is good. This is good. All right. So, ha, you should feel that vibration. So, this is a note that you could use in a scene. Like if you're doing a character that, maybe it's a character that has a lot of authority, or a lot of confidence, or a lot of boldness, you might want to place the sound of that character in your chest resonator. Okay. And you might be like, hey, get over there, put that down right now. Ha. Like if you kind of use that resonator, it's a much lower authoritative, confident voice. So if you're playing a character in a show, or if you're doing a presentation where it requires that type of tone, you could visualize or practice kind of reading in your chest resonator. Okay. Now another resonator is your throat, or sometimes people might refer to this as your adenoidals or your gutturals. And this would be like putting the vibration in your throat. Okay. So we want to be careful with this resonator, because if you're singing, you generally don't want to put all of the sound and the vibration in your throat. You're more trying to kind of put it in your mask, or your head, or your chest, or your hard palate. But if you're doing a cartoon character, or you're doing kind of a more charactery sounding person, you might want to put it in your throat for brief moments of time. If you want to do it safely with not too much stress, you don't want to hurt yourself. But if I put it here, you might notice like there's a, hey, how's it going? There's like a scratchiness or a texture, And one of the characters in my reel was Zartan, right? And he kind of spoke down here, and like, Cobra Commander, we're gonna get those Joes and make sure they never bother us again. And there's kind of a scratchy, tough guy, and this might be like a really cool character, a mysterious character, or this would probably be harder to do on stage. But if I were doing cartoon or film, that might be an interesting choice, or if you really turn it up, if I do like different Pokemon, Like there's certain characters I place them in my guttural or my throat. Like for example, I'll do like Ginga, 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 or I'll do a row, lift, right? And I'm putting a lot of that kind of texture and vibration in there, and it just switches it up. It's another note or another tone to play in your instrument. You know, or so like if I'm doing like a monster or a scary, you know, or sometimes a villain, I might put a little texture in there just to make it, you know, sound intimidating or something, you know. And then you have like your nasal resonator and your hard palate. So if you kind of put your hands like on your sinuses here or on the bridge of your nose, and then try to picture the sound coming out of the front of your face, and kind of, you know, a lot of times I'll go meow, 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 meow. Ah, ah. Can you do that with me? Meow. Good, good. Yeah, ah. Yeah, yeah. And it's very nasally, you know. And so this I might use for like if I'm doing a very persnickety character or somebody who's maybe a little bit nerdy, and I can push the glasses up on the bridge of my nose, and you know, this communicates, you know, maybe a fastidiousness or a you know, particularness or intelligence, or you kind of fill in the blank there. Or sometimes we associate, you know, lower characters with age or wisdom, or you know, not wisdom, or well, maybe stereotypically, but and then, you know, I might bring it up if I had to be a younger character, or someone who's really enthusiastic and wide-eyed and excited about life. I might place it in this resonator because it's kind of brighter sounding and enthusiastic and wow, you know, like somebody who's really optimistic and energetic, you know. But if I were, you know, kind of world weary and kind of like, you know, down and maybe depressed, I might put that kind of in my throat or my chest, you know. So again, these are different notes or different ways that you can play around with it. And then your head, if you kind of put your hand on the top of your skull, and you can kind of like if you place imagine the sound coming out of the very top of your head, and almost like there's a string or a straw, and it's just being sucked out here, like, hi, hello, oh boy, hi, this is my falsetto and my head voice, oh, 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 you know. And that could be, again, that's very charactery and exaggerated, and so you might use that rarely if you're doing a cartoon or, you know, somebody really really young. But you know, again, it's another place to put the sound, you know. And you can do this with dialogue, you can do this with, you know, lines from the show, but you can also do this as you're singing. Like as you're singing, you can place the notes in different sound of it out here, like you can kind of go through those different resonators to get different tones and notes, you know. So it's very very useful, and it a lot of times it depends on the character you're creating, but also the emotion you're conveying. You know, if you think about what does my voice do when I'm scared, right? Like, can anybody, I don't know if we can unmute students or allow them, but like what do people think happen? Like, what do you notice your own voice doing when you're scared?
Yeah, let's unmute and jump in and just talk about it.
It gets higher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's exactly right. Like, you know, like, what is that? What's going on? You know, like you might kind of like go more into your head voice or your kind of nasal resonator, you know. And then what are some things that might happen to your voice when you're really kind of relaxed or bored even?
It may sound like less enthusiastic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What might that sound like? Like if you're like really bored, like what do you notice your voice doing sometimes? Like I notice for me, like if I get bored, like sometimes it gets kind of low, and there's almost like what we might call like a vocal fry. Like I can't even be bothered to raise the volume of my voice, and like, you know, there's almost like a croakiness, like, oh, whatever, you know. So like that, you know. Or and if you get angry at someone, what do you notice your voice doing when you're angry? I think some of you might not be unmuted when you're talking. I've seen your lips move, but I'm not hearing you.
it's very like strong, bassy.
Yup. I agree. Yeah, you might get strong, you might get bassy because there's that part of us that might want to intimidate the other person. Generally, my volume goes up, and I might shout a little bit. You know, I might get a little bit more aggressive, and I might, you know, sometimes I'll like slow down my speech to really make my point. You know, so like you might notice these things with different emotions that you have. So if you're portraying those emotions in a scene or in a show or in a character or whatever, you can kind of deliberately make those choices. Like you can, there's many ways to work, but you can work from the outside in or the inside out. If you work from the inside out, we're trying to kind of get the emotions to do the work, and we think about the emotions and let the emotions affect our body and our voice. But if we work from the outside in, we can say, okay, well, what does my voice typically do when I'm angry or upset? When I'm angry, I raise my volume. So let me just raise my volume on this line. Tia, I see your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Yes. So this is really interesting. My question is, what type of vocal warm-ups do you do to achieve these different voices?
That's a great question. A lot of times I will kind of practice sliding my voice through all the different resonators. So I'll start in my chest resonator. I'm going to go, hi, and I'll kind of do like that. And then I'll go back down. Hi, you know, and I'll kind of just try to kind of get that. I'll try to make it as seamless as possible, but also as distinct as possible as I'm going through them. And then there's all kinds of like just warming up your mouth for diction, and you know, like you could do the classic like Peter Piper picked peckle pickle peppers, did peckle pickle peppers to Peter Piper pick, and just kind of different things to kind of warm up your mouth muscles and all that stuff. But I think like thinking of your body and your voice as an instrument, and playing different notes to your voice the way you would like a trumpet or a guitar can really help you achieve different things. Whether it's like, this is how this particular character speaks, and this is where this character's voice lives, or even if it's for beats in a moment, like emotions, right? Like this is the type of resonator or sound I typically associate with anger or shyness or calmness and welcoming, you know, whatever the adjectives or tone is, you can kind of, you know, think from a very technical standpoint, this is what my voice might do. Trellis.
Steven has a question.
Steven, yes.
Yeah, so could you use these resonators simultaneously?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, you can. It's tricky, but you absolutely can. Like a lot of times I'll combine my chest and my throat, you know, so I'll be like, out of my way, I'm going to destroy you. Ah! You know, or then I might go, sometimes I'll do like, I'll have like a voice creaky thing, and I'll be kind of based in my nasal resonator, but I'll also go up to my head voice, and I'll kind of do a little up and down, up and down, up and down, oh, and kind of a voice cracky thing. And then there's this really funny character that Martin Short does called Jiminy Glick, and he'll call, tell me about that. What do you think that is? And he'll kind of go like, up high, and then he'll go down low, you know, and it's kind of like a very, it's hilarious when he does it. So, but yeah, you can kind of mix and match them. You can kind of combine them. Absolutely. And I've even done things like where you can get super specific, and you can like say, what would a voice sound like if I imagine it coming out of my right cheek? And like, what kind of sound does it sound like if I'm picturing all the resonation and I contort my face into having it just come out here, you know? Which brings me to this other thing you can do is affectations, you know? And what I mean by affectations is you can have like different accents, you can have different kind of, you know, facial expressions you might be using, or you can use different speech impediments, you know? So if you do like, you know, if I say, hello there, I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi, greetings, you know, hello there. But if I say, hello there, I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi, greetings, how's it going? It's a totally different character, you know, but you can just switch it up by just playing with some of the accents. Sometimes when I do the Star Wars books, I'm doing these aliens, and in Star Wars, they wear these really elaborate masks. And so sometimes when I'm trying to do Admiral Akbar, what helps me get that sound is I try to make my face the way it looks in the mask. So when he's on the screen, his lips are very stiff. And so I try to make this face, and that helps me get in a character. It's a trap. Look out. And there's something about my face being super stiff like this that helps me achieve that character. Or like for Bosk, he's this lizard. So when I think of lizards, I think of like reptiles and that flickering tongue they have. So sometimes when I'm like, Bosk didn't really speak in the movies, but when I have to do them in the books, I'll latch on to that reptile idea, and I'll maybe put like a little hiss in his line. So I'll say, Solo, bring me the Wookiee. I shall stalk him until he's stopped. You know, and I'll just add like that little hissing or lisping thing. And that's another way to kind of make a distinct character, kind of use my voice to achieve that, you know. Another thing that we started to talk about is just attitudes, right? You know, if I say, you know, I'm going to the grocery store, do you want anything? That's just a line on a page, but that line doesn't come to life until I put the proper emotion behind it or the proper intention behind it. So if I say, I'm going to the grocery store, do you want anything? I could pick all these different attitudes and it completely changes the line. Sorry, somebody just dropped something outside my apartment. So if I want to, let's say, if I want to seek vengeance, okay, so I might say, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you want anything? You know, that's like a particular way of saying that line. But if I'm maybe I want to change it up, and maybe I want to be afraid, and maybe the character I'm speaking to is my boss, or it's someone that intimidates me. So I might say, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you want anything? Like it totally, like the lines on the page are the same, but the performance is totally switched up based on the attitude that you bring to it, you know? So one thing you can do to create characters, or if you have a character in a script, like you can kind of go through and try to assign like what attitude am I going to use for this particular line or this particular scene. You know, another thing you can do, and this may,
Mark,
go ahead.
Can we
Yeah,
pause here for a second?
please. Yeah.
This is so good. If you could go back to the last screen.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I really want to, where I think this applies in Voices of Carmen, is specifically we're this year doing the full show, but we have several touring shows that are narrative shows. And
Oh, wow.
in those narrated shows, we have 4, sometimes more people who are sort of carrying the story. And one of the things that can happen is it can get sort of like just reading a book, and it sort of
Yeah.
stays monotone. And one of the directions that I give is, if someone closed their eyes and didn't see what was going on, could they feel this story and feel like you were taking them on the journey? So I just
Yeah.
want to just point that out to our actors, especially for this coming Voices of Carmen. These tools and techniques are going to be really useful for you, because we choose different narrators for each of the touring shows. So lots of people get to do that. Even if you're in the show, you can still narrate an act of it and then go and do the other act. So definitely latch on to this. And I also just wanted to pause to see if there's any more questions. You're just like giving us such a wealth of material.
Sorry, yeah, I
Any
can't
more?
see the I can't see everybody's screen because of the way I'm doing the screen share. So if you do have a question, just jump in. I'm sorry if I'm blowing past them. So yeah.
Oh no, not at all. You've been doing great.
Not on.
Yes. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, I'm not
What matter?
hearing
We
you.
can't hear you.
Are you muted, or is your mic on?
Stand by. Is Janetta still here, or did she fall off? Oh, I still see her.
Lynette? Oh, there you are.
Oh, Lynette. Oh. Hello?
Yay, we got you.
Hi, sorry. So whenever you get like assigned to a role, how do you pick what different like area, like what type of voice you're gonna use, or like how you're gonna portray the role, just from like being assigned the role?
That's awesome. Yeah. So the first thing I'll do is I'll read the whole script and I'll try to make notes in the margin of my script anytime my character speaks. So if my character is speaking, I'll try to look at the actual lines they're saying and like, you know, how do they feel about what's going on in this moment? Are they angry? Are they happy? Are they sad? Um, what type of person are they? Like, are they a negative person? Are they an enthusiastic person? Are they a mean person? Are they, I'll try to get as much information about the character from their lines. And then I'll also look at what the other characters say about my character. So if later in the script someone's saying, oh, that Mark is just a genius, like, did you see how quickly, okay, that gives me a clue that, okay, other people see this character as very, very smart. Or if vice versa, if they're saying, I can't believe what a doofus that Mark is, and can you believe that he didn't know what a cell phone was, and like okay, so other people see my character as very unintelligent or not very experienced or whatever. So that all of those clues give me ideas about who this person is. And so then based on that information, I try to pick a voice that might communicate those ideas. So like if it's a very intelligent character, I try to think, well, what type of a voice or what type of a speech pattern or what type of an accent do people typically associate with, intelligence? Or if this guy's really suave and like really like charming and like he's the desire of everyone, like what type of attitude and resonator like do I associate? Like I might go down and smooth, like if I'm trying to be like, romantic or confident or cocky, or whatever, I'll do that. Or sometimes you can make a really interesting choice and like, like let's say it's like a really tough character and a really, strong and intimidating character. But if it's like a comedy or, I might maybe play against type even. I might, go like, you better report right away. I might pick a really high voice, but really, really intimidating. I was like a Joe Pesci and like play against type sometimes, and that depends on the production and that depends on the tone of the piece you're doing. But, sometimes that can be an interesting choice as well, but I try to take all that information and think like, what's going to communicate how this character is being used in the show, like how, to kind of propel the plot forward and propel the emotion forward, and then like what CJ was saying with those narrated lines, when I first started doing audiobooks, that was something I really had to learn because I got hired because I could do a lot of different character voices and I was good at like making my voice sound like a lot of different people. But when it did come to just the straight narration, it was sounding very boring. It was sounding very, very flat. And the director had to like point that out to me and kind of say, hey, you need to make the narration as important and as engaging as you would a line of dialogue. Because, like when you get to the dialogue, it's really interesting and you're acting it very, passionately. But when you say like, he walked into the room, it was a cold room, there were no windows, it sounds very like monotone and flat. And you have to realize that the author is writing that description of that room for a very important reason. And that description is kind of the inner monologue of the characters in that story. There's a reason that they're noticing that there's no windows in that room. That means something to them emotionally. There's a reason that if it's described as cold and barren, that means something emotionally to those characters. So you have to, there's a thing that he described it as word painting. And I really like that imagery of word painting. He's like, you want to paint with your words. So like, in other words, paint the picture for the listener so that they can see it in their mind by the way you're describing it. So if I say he walked into the room, it was cold and barren, and there were no windows, that's a very flat way to say that. But if I say he walked into the room, it was cold and barren, there were no windows, like it all of a sudden takes on a different emotion, like you can maybe start to feel the character's apprehension about being in that room, because to him that's a very scary place to be, that there's no windows, I can't see outside, I can't see where I am, and it changes the whole tenor of the piece, so try to, like, if you have to do those narrations, maybe think of that idea of like word painting, and think of it as like the inner thoughts of a character, so that character has a point of view and a perspective. So like if someone hates the outside and hates bugs and hates sunlight, the idea that there's no windows to that character might be really good. So and if they don't like being hot, so like it was cold, there were no windows, that character saying it from a different point of view. So, did someone have a question? Yeah, Tia?
Yes, my question is, how do you find work as a voice actor?
That's really good. Yeah, so it's definitely tricky. I think number one, if you really work at the skills you need, that will help you, because if you're good at what you do, eventually someone's going to notice that. And if you're easy to get along with and hardworking, like eventually an opportunity is going to come along. Someone's going to give you that opportunity. If you make the most of that, then it's going to start to snowball, and it's kind of like what CJ was saying in the beginning. It's like we've worked together on a lot of different things, because we'll like she'll think of me for things, but it's only because we work together on stuff, and we've been able to kind of do like people will, like, I've worked on projects and then gotten recommended to other projects because of that initial first thing. But getting your foot in the door initially, I feel like everyone I talk to has a different story. Like there's some people that they go on these websites, like voices.com or voice123.com, and you pay a fee to be on the site, and you put your demo on that site, and then you can audition. There's other people that just from being in a production like what you're doing, someone will think of you because you were in that production and you did a great job on the production, and they'll say, hey, I've got this other project that you'd be perfect for. So that's another way. There's all kinds of casting websites like Backstage and Actors Access and Actors Connection. So you could explore all those things, but everybody's got a lot of different paths. And so just keep working at your skills, and eventually someone will notice it, I think. So let me see if I can get back in here. Oops. Okay. So another thing that I think is really good when you're working on a script or when you're using your voice and trying to perform is thinking about putting things in your body and being specific and kind of learning how to boil things down. What I mean by putting things in your body is kind of how we were talking about with your emotions. Like, when I'm scared, I notice my voice going up, or when I'm angry, I notice my voice going down. When you're actually doing things in real life, your body position will do things to your voice. So like, if the line is, here, help, I need you to help me, please. If you're doing something with your body, like let's say you're running, if you're running, your voice is going to sound different when you're doing that. So it might sound like, here, help, I need you to help me, please. Because you're kind of breathing heavily, your action, but if you're like, let's say you're hanging from a cliff, if you're like actually doing this with your body, and if I'm stretching my arm up as I say this, and I'm pretending that I'm holding on to a rope dangling from a cliff, here, help, I need you to help me. Like there's something about stretching my body in that position that changes how I read that line or how I say that. So if there's a line in the show where you're hiding from someone or you're trying not to be discovered, you might want to, position your body in such a way that, communicates that. Or if you're running, or if you're far away from someone, right? Like if you're calling out to someone who's a block away, you're going to talk a lot louder than if you were right next to them, so kind of. And if you're doing this in voiceover, the temptation is to just kind of be in front of the mic and just read it off the page. But if you're thinking through these details, like, well, as this line is being read, where am I in relation to the other characters in the show, or what's happening in this moment, that can affect how you might read that. And I think like the more specific you can be, the better. You want to try to be as detailed and put as much thought as you can into what's going on in these lines and in this background. I had this acting teacher where he basically told us to bring an orange to class. And he said, we're going to spend the whole hour talking about this orange. And we were all like, what? Like, that's crazy. Like, how are we going to fill the hour? There's no way we can do that. And, we came in, and at first he was like, okay, describe the orange. And we're like, it's round and it's orange, and we didn't know what to say. And he's like, all right, well, tell me about the surface of the orange. How does that feel? And like, oh, well, there's like these little dimples in it, and it's kind of like a slightly bumpy thing, and it's smooth up here, but when we go towards the stem, there's like some wrinkles or something. It's like, okay, how does it smell? And I'm like, oh, okay, it smells like citrusy. And then he said, okay, now I want you to peel the orange open. And we're like, okay, well, now on the inside of the peel, it's kind of this rough, tangly material. And then if we break it apart, there's like these little wedges, and like, oh, that's interesting. And he's like, go even further. And it's like, okay, well, if I look at the wedges, there's like these little, like almost like tubes that make up each wedge. And if I can break off one of those tubes, and he's like, well, what does that taste like? And it's like, oh, wow, that's really sweet. Or, oh, hey, mine's sour. And like, like they can be different. And before you knew it, an hour had gone by, and we were just talking about this orange, but we learned to look at it in different ways and examine it in much more specific ways. And I think the same is true with your characters or your dialogue or whatever. You want to try to examine it as closely as possible and like really get as specific and detailed as you can. Yes, somebody had a question.
Steven has a question.
Yeah, Steven, yeah.
Yeah, okay, hi. So when it comes to specificity, how close to reality does it have to be? Or how true do you have to make it, or can you stray away from it?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think it depends on the overall tone of the project. Like I've worked on some shows where they want it to be very grounded in reality and very naturalistic and very realistic. But then there's other shows, like if you watch like Rick and Morty, or The Simpsons or SpongeBob SquarePants or whatever, it's a much more heightened experience. Or even sometimes, in like the difference between like film and theater, sometimes like, in film, the camera can pick up like the slightest twitch of an eyebrow or the slightest sneer on a lip. But in theater, if you're in the back row, and you're really far away from the stage, you're not going to notice all those details. So you might make a deliberate choice to be a little bit more heightened and a little bit more expressive than you would be in natural everyday life, or if you were on film. But that doesn't mean it's not realistic in the conveying of the particular emotion. It's just a heightened example of it, So it really depends on the project, the tone of the project. If it's comedy, if it's drama, there, a lot of those things play in. But you can still be specific no matter what it is, and be if I can make a choice to be deliberately exaggerated, and there's like a reason I'm being exaggerated or whatever, it's much like if I'm just like, oh no, please don't hurt me. Like right now I'm raising my voice and like, please don't hurt me. But maybe if I'm choosing that I'm like disgusted by this thing, like maybe it's like a really like slimy, toxic waste thing, like, oh no, please don't hurt me. Like that added, like the being more specific about it, and may be disgusted as well as afraid, can add a different layer to it. It changes it up and makes it even more detailed, so anyway, it's just interesting. Ways to kind of be specific is you can think of like think of it like a mix board on like an audio mixing table, right? There's all these different knobs. And, if you ever get a chance to hang out with Winston, like he might, talk to you about all the different things that he has to do when he mixes something. But each of those knobs on that board does something different, and you can, you know, dial it from 1 to 10. And there's no right or wrong with a lot of these specific choices, but it's just, you know, do we want a 9 for this moment, or do we want a 5 or a 4, or do we want, you know, a 1 or a 2, you know, and you can play with things like volume or tone of voice or tempo, you know, like a lot of times, like it's fun to play with tempo with characters because, you know, a nervous character, well, let me ask you guys, like, if someone's nervous or anxious, like what kind of tempo do they usually speak with? Does anybody have any guesses or observations? Like, sorry, somebody's.
Mark, one question. Would you be able to move your view of us to the side, because it's blocking the words on the screen?
Sorry. Yep. Let's see if I can do that. Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, it's again, like there's different people and different choices. You know, I think a lot of times I can associate if someone's nervous that they might speak really fast or really excited, like frantically, you know, like, oh no, you know, or sometimes if they're scared or intimidated, they might speak really soft, you know, and really like kind of not with a lot of volume, you know. So like you can play with a lot of those things as you're creating your character, or as you're figuring out how you want to do your lines. Those are all different ways of being specific. And I think, you know, a lot of times I need to boil this stuff down because I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys right now, but if I can just write in the margin of my script a couple of keywords that will help me remember some of these choices. So if I write down, like, you know, soft, anxious, soft, anxious, and, like, you know, clenched teeth, like those 3 words can help me remember some of those choices that I want to make for a particular character or a particular scene. I think a big thing when you're analyzing scripts is you really want to understand what it is you're saying. And I imagine in school, you guys have probably done these questions. You know, the 5 W's. It's who, what, when, where, why. And when you're reading your scripts, it's really helpful to kind of analyze and ask these questions of your character or of the play, right? Like, who am I? That can be everything from, am I male? Am I female? How old am I? Am I young? Am I old? What type of job or what type of student am I? Who am I to other people in the show? Am I, in terms of status, am I a higher status or a lower status? You know, does everyone fall over themselves and just love and adore me, or are people like really annoyed by me and I'm kind of bothersome to them? Who am I to all these different people? Who am I to myself? Do I feel confident about myself? Do I feel insecure about myself? Do I feel like I belong? Do I feel like I don't belong? Like, who am I? You know, and these are things, you know, sometimes I'll have a journal, and I'll if I'm working on a character, and I'll write all these things in a separate journal so I can go back and refer to them during rehearsals and things like that. What am I doing? Am I trying to intimidate someone? Am I in the middle of a fight? Am I running away from someone? Am I sleeping? Am I studying? Am I, you know, what's going on in the scene? Am I trying to, you know, charm someone? Am I flirting with someone? Am I trying to seduce or, persuade someone to follow me? Like, what am I doing? What are my intentions? What are my attitudes here? Where am I? You know, is this show taking place in the past? Is it in the present? Am I outdoors? Am I in a classroom? Am I at a job? You know, how do those environments affect how you interact with people? Or, you know, if you're in a library, if you're doing a scene in a library, you might be whispering your lines and talking very softly. If you're on a battlefield, you might be shouting your lines so that you can be heard over the cannons and the things and stuff like that. You know, like, if you're on a street corner, whatever it is, like those things will affect what's going on in the scene and how you're doing that, you know. You know, when am I, you know, is it daytime? Is it nighttime? is this the past? Is this the present, the future? All those things. And then why? Like, why am I here? Like, why am I talking to this character right now? Do I want something from them? Do they want something from me? Am I trying, am I on my way to someplace else? Was I ordered to be here? What's my relationship to this person? Are they my friend? Or are they my enemy? Are they a complete stranger to me? Like, why am I interacting, and what's going on? What are my goals? Like, why am I here? Like, why am I, or what am I trying to get out of this situation? So really, and it might seem kind of academic, and it might seem like a lot of information, but if you take time to really analyze that stuff, it'll come through in the performance. Like, it'll really make a big difference when you're performing it, if you're trying to internalize as much of that stuff as possible. I feel like that was a bit of a ramble. Does anyone have any questions about that?
I have a question, but not about this.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
So, when you're voice acting, this is kind of a silly question, but I wonder if it's possible. Have you ever heard of a case, or has that ever happened to you, when you're so into a job or whatever you're doing, voice acting wise, that you kind of forget what your voice sound like? Does that happen? Like,
Sometimes, yeah. No, I mean, yeah. I mean, because like especially for me, like I do tend to get hired to do character voices a lot. So if someone will say to me, just be yourself, just be natural, sometimes I get like dumbfounded. I'm like, what do I sound like? Like, what is natural? Because like I am so used to kind of, making these choices. But that is that's a good thing to be aware of. And like, maybe, because obviously some characters, the characters are very close to who you are in your stage of life, or just who you are as a person. So it is good to know how to be relaxed and be natural, and I think a lot of times for that, I let the emotional intentions do the work, instead of like, what resonator am I using, or how much diction am I using? Like, if it requires for a more grounded, natural performance, I tend to focus more on the emotional intentions instead of the technical intentions of like, what resonator am I in, or what accent am I using, or that type of thing. But yeah, and then I think like another way, kind of going off of that, is trying to find a personal connection to the lines you're saying, or the situation that's happening in the script. So if one of the characters is in love, you want to try to connect to that on a personal level, like trying to figure out, well, have I ever been in love, or what do I imagine being in love would feel like, and if you can like think about, like how that made you feel. And again, like if you're analyzing it on a purely technical level, like what did that do to my voice? How do I sound when I'm speaking to that special someone? What volume am I at? What kind of tone am I using? All that stuff. It can help make the script come alive in a deeper way. Or if you're afraid, or if you're intimidated, or if you're angry, like thinking of times that maybe you were angry, right? And kind of remembering it, like what was my body doing? What was my posture doing in those moments? What was my voice doing? And just really trying to kind of connect to those moments. That can really, really help. One thing you could do is just, as you're working on your script, you can kind of like, just clarify the copy and try to figure out like what it is you're trying to accomplish. So, I'll start very simple. I'll just highlight my lines so that I can find where I am in there. And then I might choose like an emotional intention or an attitude that will help me with how I'm reading this. So I chose for this line, like to relish or savor, meaning like, really like enjoy it, or kind of, really take it in. So can I get a volunteer actually to read these lines?
No one else wants to. I got it.
Come on. All right, Steven, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So yeah, so go ahead and give me a read of these two lines. And I want you to, whatever this means to you, to relish and to savor. I want you to try to kind of read it with that intention.
Okay, to relish or to savor. Okay. I've been waiting for you, Holly. I've heard so much about you. I'm so glad to meet you and your new friend. It's always nice to make new friends, isn't it? It has been such a long time since I've had a new friend, and I've been so lonely.
Really nice. Good job, Steven. Nice, 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 nice. I like that. I like the kind of, I heard the yearning in that read and kind of that, the performance. I really like that. So let's imagine that maybe this voice is some sort of, creature or monster. And when he's saying that I've been waiting for you, I've been lonely for so long, like what if he's like going to literally eat this person or like he's like savoring them in a way that you would like savor a cheeseburger, like, oh, I can't wait to, this is like feeding time in a way. And maybe like, what if we place this a little bit more in your chest resonator and try to lower it in pitch a little bit? Let's play with some of those ideas. What might that sound like?
Me again?
Yeah, sorry, you again. Sorry,
sorry.
yeah.
All right, my bad. Lower pitch. I've been waiting for you, Holly. I've heard so much about you. I'm so glad to meet you and your new friend. It's always nice to make new friends, isn't it? It has been such a long time since I've had a new friend, and I've been so lonely.
Nice job, dude. I liked it. I liked it. Great job. I love that texture you put in there. That definitely added a different interpretation to it. I like that. And if you guys noticed, like there were certain words that he kind of chose to take a deliberate pause on, which I also thought was kind of an interesting choice and a very cool way to do that. Sometimes when I'm, clarifying my copy or clarifying the script, I'll underline certain words, if my intention is to relish or to savor, like I underline waiting because, like, oh, I've been waiting for this for so long and I just can't wait, or such a long time. Oh, and I've been so lonely. Like those are words that kind of help me connect to that intention that I'm focusing on. So I might want to put a little extra stress on those words when I'm performing them, or a little extra emphasis. And then, like we could try a different intimidation, like we could try to intimidate and all these different things. So there's lots of different ways to try to kind of accomplish that stuff. So I guess what I was thinking now is there any questions or any things you want more clarification on, or even things that might have to do with this show that I could help with, or any other additional questions about this stuff?
Lynetta has her hand up. You can unmute Lynetta.
Yeah.
Hello? Okay, I just have one more question. So whenever you're reading your scripts and stuff, do you ever like ad-lib off of the scripts to get more of a feel of like what you're like feeling and stuff?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Thank you for asking that. I do quite a lot, actually. I have a one friend that describes this as warm-up words. And meaning like sometimes it helps him warm up into the character if he kind of ad-libs a phrase before whatever the line is, So like if the line is like, what are you thinking? Why did you do that? I might ad-lib into that, like, I can't believe it. It's so stupid. It's like, what were you thinking? Why did you do that? And there was something about, kind of ad-libbing that thing before it that helped me kind of get into that line, or sometimes the way a script is written, it might say, we are on our way. We are going to be there in 5 minutes. Like that's, if I'm reading that off the page, that might be the grammatically correct way to say that, or the grammatically correct way to read that or whatever. But if I was just, depending on the show or the character and what time period we're in and all these different details, it might make more sense for me to say, we're going to the store, we're going to be there in 5, and like it communicates the same idea, but it feels a little bit more natural to me, or maybe natural to the time period, or if it's contemporary, or if it's by contrast, if it's something taking place in the past, and it says we're gonna be there, I might say, and the character in my mind is more formal or more, I might say we are going to, or I might uncontract certain words, or, so like in a lot of those choices you have to make with your director and with your writer, because sometimes the writer and director are going to be sticklers for what's on the page, and they're going to have very strong opinions about, this is the way I want it said, and there's a reason that this is important to the show later on, or I don't want ad libs. And if that's the case, then you definitely want to go with what their choices are, because they're looking at the overall production. And if you're doing something different than what the tone of the overall production is, those aren't going to gel together. Those aren't going to fit well together. So the director and the writer have the big picture in mind. So you want to defer to them. But sometimes you're going to be so focused on the character, and you're going to be doing so much thinking about the character that, you might come up with an idea that they really like. So some of those ad libs, or kind of loosening up of the language, or adding in extra words or taking away certain words, might serve the overall project better. So, and they might say, I've had plenty of auditions and plenty of shows where they're like, "Ooh, I love that ad lib," or "Yes, let's put that in there." So it just it always depends on the project and the people you're working with. But I think it's always better to try. I think. I have one friend that says, be strong and be wrong, like meaning like make a big choice and commit to that choice. And if it's wrong, then you don't do it again. But try it out, especially in rehearsal. Rehearsal's the time to experiment with that stuff, see if it works. And if it doesn't, and then you can have that for the show. So, Steve, I believe.
Yep. So, earlier in the Zoom, when Miss CJ said when she doesn't know how to uplift a character voice in a certain way, she comes to you. But what if she comes to you and you also don't know how to? How do you come up with? How do you brainstorm how to elevate a character with a voice? Or
that's a great question. Yeah. Well, again, I think we would probably have discussions about what this character's function is in the story. So like, for example, the last thing that she asked me to do was, I can't remember the name of the project, but she asked me that it was a show about like racial tension between a black character and a police officer, and she wanted me to be the police officer. And it was very clear from the scene that the police officer was abusing his power and kind of abusing his position and kind of trying to intimidate the other character, and was really kind of treating the other character very unfairly. So and the character only had like one line, and like it was something like, you're not supposed to be here, are you, or something like that, and if you could approach that line, and I could just say, you're not supposed to be here, are you, and I could be kind of very matter of fact, and I could be very calm, cool, and collected. But the way that character is being used in that particular scene, is to highlight injustice and to highlight abuse and to highlight the unfairness. So we kind of decided to make a choice to kind of, in terms of his tone of voice and his intimidation, and even though it was just that one line, we kind of had to think of all those details and all that backstory because it affected the read. And then it was probably a more heightened performance than what you might do if you were just a regular person or a regular police officer or whatever. But because of their role in the show and what they were trying to highlight, it helped us to kind of, emphasize those aspects or those qualities. So hope that made sense. So, and then sometimes too, like if I don't know what to do and like I'm reading something and there's just no ideas coming to mind, sometimes just making a choice, just any choice can help elevate it. Like I'm doing a show right now, and the only piece of information I had about this particular character was that he was a pet shop owner. And that's the only information I had in the scene and in the dialogue. So I'm like, well, how do I make this come alive? So I just made a choice. Okay, I'm deciding that this guy's an older gentleman, and I'm deciding that maybe he's a little hard of hearing, and just making that choice. There's nothing in the script that said he was old or that he couldn't hear very well, but I just made a choice and went with that choice, and it was really well received. Like the director really, really liked it, so sometimes like just making any, and then sometimes it's the wrong choice and it's like, okay, that didn't work with what else is going on, but let me just make a different choice. So sometimes just making any choice can make it come alive. Because if you're not making a choice, then it will seem very generalized. It will seem very bland. But if you're making a choice, like I'm deciding this guy, there was a show I directed a couple weeks ago, and there were two characters on stage, and their dialogue was very, very general. It was lines like, what did you bring? What did you bring to put in the time capsule? And, that can be a very, expositional line, meaning it can be a line that just tells you plot information. There's no real emotional intent behind it. But to make it more interesting, we just decided that this character hates the other character. So when they say, what did you bring? She decided to say it like, what did you bring? And all of a sudden that became a lot more interesting to watch, because you could see the dynamic on stage. You could see their relationship, even though there was nothing in the line that maybe would have indicated that they had any kind of history to each other. But just making a choice that these guys don't like each other, that affected how that line was read. And it made it much more interesting. It kind of added some humor to the moment. It added all this stuff that was made it come alive. It was really cool. Oh,
No.
was somebody else talking?
Sorry. Steven, did you have another question?
Yeah. So are there any roles that you fit? No, sorry, not. Is there anything you would decline as a role, or is there anything you have declined that you just wouldn't do, and why?
Yeah. No, I have. There's some roles that I've declined because there's some personal boundaries that I've set up for myself just as a performer that I've decided I don't want to do. Like in this, it's hard to say this without getting too specific, but like there's there's just certain words that I'm not comfortable saying because of my religion. So I've decided that, I don't want to say certain words. So there's been some jobs where I'll ask the director, hey, do you mind if I change this word to something else that I'm more comfortable saying? And sometimes they've said yes and changed the script for me, but sometimes they've said, no, this is what the line says, and this is what we need the character to say. And so then, and they've said, we're going to use somebody else. You're fired. You're not going to do this, but I've also seen like, sometimes, especially young actors, can feel like they have to do whatever's presented to them. So a lot of times, young actors will be put in, situations where they're in a romantic scene and maybe they feel like they have to do something, with nudity or with or imitating sexual behavior and things like that. And um, especially when I was kind of coming up and starting out, I had teachers basically say, like, you have to be willing to do that or else you cannot be an actor. Like, you have to do that. But what's come out over the past several decades is that, a lot of people were, put in uncomfortable positions and done things that they shouldn't have been forced to do. And we're kind of living at a time now where it's a little bit more accepted to say, this is not something I'm comfortable doing. Can we do this instead? And I think a lot of times, if you have that something else instead, it will help people still want to work with you, as opposed to, I'm not doing that or I'm not comfortable with that. That can be hard to work with on a creative basis, but it's important to protect yourself. And if there's material that you feel like depicts, a situation that you don't want to depict, or maybe perpetuates certain stereotypes that you don't want perpetuated, or puts you in a morally compromised position where, you don't want to do that, then you're free to not do that. Now, those are all individual choices you have to make, but I think we're definitely starting to kind of enter a time where that's a little bit more acceptable. But it helps kind of grease the wheel, or helps things move along better if you come to the table with alternative suggestions or alternative ideas. So it's just not like, I'm not doing that, but more like, I'm not comfortable doing that, but could we do this? And I feel like that can help sometimes. So does
anyone else? Sorry.
Sorry. No. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Marc Thompson before we wrap up?
One thing,
you can just unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. Somebody had a question.
Yeah. So one more.
Yeah. Go for it, dude.
Yeah. So, what are some fun exercises that you can share with us that you do that helps you prepare for a character?
Oh, yeah, that's cool. I definitely talk to myself a lot in the shower and as I'm walking down the street. And sometimes what I'll do is, if I'm trying to find a voice, I will, get a sample of the dialogue and I'll try out different experiments. Like, what does he sound like here? What does he sound like here? And I'll record samples and I'll on my phone, and then I'll play them back and kind of listen to how it sounds. And then sometimes, as I'm like walking my dog, I'll like read street signs in the character voice to see, how they sound saying average everyday things. And then one really fun one, if you're super brave, is I once had a teacher kind of say, like, to create a character voice and then see if you can make that character voice believable enough that if you were to go and interact with a stranger with that voice, they couldn't tell that you're doing a voice. So, like, go order some food at, Burger King, in that character voice, and like, so sometimes I'll be like, yeah, right. Can I get a quarter pounder with cheese and large fries and a Coca-Cola, please? And they're like, yep, sure, no problem, sir. And like, oh, it worked. So like you get like, practice, different things just to get comfortable playing with it. And then another thing, I don't know if this is fun as much as it is useful, but like, YouTube is a great resource. And sometimes I'll like look up different characters on YouTube and try to see how close I can like imitate or mimic people, or mimic different actors that I like, as a way to kind of exercise your voice and use different things. So, and then one thing I actually didn't mention that I probably should mention, if you're interested in pursuing voiceover for work, one of the first steps you want to do is you want to get a demo reel together. And what that is like maybe like a recording that's like about a minute long, of you just, showing different aspects of your voice. So you could get like a commercial demo, you could get an animation demo, you could get a narration demo. And you just want to kind of, you could record it on a USB microphone in your laptop, or if you know someone with a studio that could help out, you could have them record that, and then you could, maybe put some light music and sound effects behind it to make it sound as if it's coming from a commercial or coming from a cartoon or whatever. And that way you have that's kind of the equivalent of a headshot and resume. Like that's something that if someone's got a commercial they're casting or a cartoon they're casting or an explainer video or something, that's something you can just email them as an MP3 or post on a website and send them a link to your website that can really, get your foot in the door and kind of give people an idea of what you sound like and what your voice can do. And that would be a very important first step if this is something that you're thinking of pursuing. So, right. But does anyone else have any other questions or thoughts or? Ooh. Well, I hope you guys have fun with Carmen. Like it's like I've seen one of the online ones and it's really great. So I definitely admire what you guys are doing with that project, and I think it's really inspiring and helpful and a lot of fun. So I hope you guys have a great time with it.
Nice. So we want to, sorry, can everyone hear me? We want to thank you, Mr. Marc, so much for joining us today for our second workshop in our Carmen coaching series for 2023. If you want to learn more about Marc's work specifically, his website is here, marcthompson.net. We also have a post-workshop survey. I'll drop the link in the chat for you all. We would like for you to fill it out. Let us know, what information you had before coming into the workshop and some information that you're leaving with that can help you as an artist specifically, and as we go into our summer together for Voices of Carmen. And just a few reminders and save the dates. Our new hire meeting is June 22nd. It's at 6:30 and it's virtual. It's for all participants, as well as your parents and guardians. Will answer a lot of the questions you might have about the summer, give out some more specific information about starting our summer together. Our last workshop for this series will be on Sunday, June 25th. It'll be virtual, and we'll have a panel of different Broadway pros come talk about their experiences, answer any questions you might have about being on Broadway specifically. And of course, Voices of Carmen starts on July 10th in person at the Motor House. We're so excited. We can't wait to see you all there. It's very exciting. July 10th through April 10th. We did send out the new hire email, so you have the specific dates of different programming. And just as a reminder, please read all of your emails thoroughly for important information, for updates, and for specific action items. I know the emails are usually packed full of information, but we try to put all the action items into one area so you know exactly what we're asking for you to do. The paperwork packets will be sent out at the end of May for everyone. And in the email we sent, we asked you to fill out the participant info survey, as well as the conflict calendar survey. Some of you already sent in your conflict calendars, and we appreciate it so much. But for the rest of you, if you know of any dates specifically that you will not be here during the summer, please let us know now so we know how to plan for our summer. And as a reminder, you are only allowed to miss 4 days for Voices of Carmen. All right, does anyone have any other questions? I'll drop the link for the post-survey workshop right here. As soon as I figure out where I put it.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Marc, for meeting with us today. This was very informational and really fun. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. It was great.
All right. Here's the link for the survey for you all. Please fill it out as soon as you can. It's right there in the chat. And we can also email it out to you if you don't click it. now and need it later. All right. Thank you again, Mr. Mark. This workshop was wonderful. I took a lot of notes here.
Oh, good.
I might try to voice act myself, you know.
Oh, yeah. Join us.
All right. You all have a great rest of your day. Please let us know if you have any questions outside of here. And go to Mr. Mark's website, see all the work he's done. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
All right,
Have a
thanks,
good day,
guys.
everyone.
See ya.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.